You are now listening to the Verified Phenoms podcast. In this show, we speak with individuals who have come from all walks of life and have overcome the mental limitations of imposter syndrome, perfectionism, and overthinking. Get your notebook ready and stay tuned to learn how you can win your mental battles and become a verified phenom as well. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Verified Phenoms. Sean, happy Saturday. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Philip. Thanks for having me here. I'm excited to have a chat.
Thank you. I first want to just congratulate you on the success that you've been having. One, the discipline and consistency that you've had over so many years, with being able to just stay consistent. I saw that you have lost a lot of weight and you really got dialed in with your fitness and just health journey. But I also saw, even most recently, that you celebrated 20 years as a volunteer firefighter. Is that correct?
Yes, it definitely has come with its struggle. So let's put that in there. But 20 years on the fire department, and yeah, all the 100 pounds lost, and kind of everything I've been working on. It's been an interesting few years.
I really want to ask you about that. So about two years ago, I actually got accepted into the fire academy, and I was going to be a full-time firefighter. But I ended up passing up on the opportunity because there was a slight conflict with the fire academy and something else I had going on. So being a volunteer firefighter is actually something that I still want to do. So what advice would you give somebody that's interested in being a volunteer firefighter?
Well, I guess the biggest thing is find out what your local county or municipality has for that service, because everywhere is going to be different. I'm from Canada, so similarities but differences between Canada and the US. I've done lots of courses in both areas, and the biggest thing is just find out what is available near you and just express interest. Show if it's small town, it might not be as thorough as an application package as something somewhere busier, more urban. So find out what's available and just apply, let them know, and just see what it is they want you to do. It's just that interest level and being involved, and the volunteering and making yourself available is probably the biggest step.
Okay. I don't know if you can, but what are some of those most interesting stories? It's been 20 years, so I'm pretty sure you've experienced something that's a little out there. Can you share like just one story that's really memorable to you over the 2 decades that you've been volunteer firefighter?
I can. Try to be careful as much, because there's a lot of stuff that you see and do in that first responder world that, and not everybody can handle or know how to take that information. So, without getting into any kind of detail, I think the biggest thing is just what people have been doing leading up to, say, a car accident. There's been some crazy things people have been, without getting into super detail, but someone doing something to themselves while they're driving and then end up in an accident and passed out. And you come along to the accident and see things that they probably weren't prepared to have you see, and then just different things, people driving by and their own distractions, and you're kind of worried about yourself while other people might be not wearing clothes or whatever while they're driving by. It's probably one of the standouts.
When I was going through the process of applying, going through the tests and all things of that nature to become a firefighter, one thing that they constantly asked me was, do you perform well under pressure? And that was something that they also asked my preferences. And I'm pretty sure that is within your experience, you notice that you have to be a person to perform well under pressure. Pivoting away slightly from like the firefighter conversation, but just being able to handle pressure, because I know you can do that. Considering that you've been within this field for so long, did you have to already be able to, well, actually, maybe still around it, but just pivoting a little bit. Were you already good with handling pressure prior coming to the fire academy or the fire department?
I think I had an advantage because my father was on the volunteer department at the time, and
Mm-hmm.
when I was growing up, there was different training exercises that my brothers and I would help with. We'd pretend to be patients, and they would go through whatever the scenario was. So I had an idea getting into it, but as I developed into it, that's something that you can learn. You're not born with that thinking under pressure skill. The more you do something, no matter what it is, the easier it might become. So it's really about decision making and training. If you don't know how to do something, you're going to have a hard time doing it quickly and without thinking. So the more you train, the more you learn, the easier it is to do things quickly, because you'll have a concept of what it is you might do in that environment. So like for firefighting, it was as we would train to do certain things, and whatever the incident was, the more I was on, the longer I was on, the more comfortable I got, the quicker I could decide safely what to do and not to do.
Mm, okay, okay. It can definitely be a skill that can be learned. That's I like that. I really do. I I noticed. So I've worked in television for a couple of years, well, a little over a decade at this point. And in my experience, live television can be a lot of pressure because you don't want to mess up with thousands and thousands of people watching, right? And you have to be able to make decisions in a split second. A camera goes down, something happens on TV. You have to figure out within really the next 3 seconds how you're going to clean up this entire act in order to make sure that nothing really hits the fan. As you continue to progress within your career overall, how are you finding that you're using those decision making skills to just continue your self development, your personal development?
I think the biggest thing is, whether we're talking firefighting, television, or whatever it is, we're headed towards and working on. I've always been one to have a plan B, C, and D. While I was working on being a volunteer firefighter, I had started an electrical apprenticeship. At the time, it was that I thought I wanted to do full time firefighting, and what best could I do to get myself there. I had already spent time getting a law and security diploma, college, was working at a group home. So I had, that plan, whatever sequence of letter it was I was working at a group home, I was on the volunteer fire department, and I started an electrical apprenticeship. So kind of throughout my whole life, I've always had plan B, C, and D, the things in the background, and just constantly as time goes, just building on each of them individually. And then if something happened with one or the other, I had something kind of in the background that I could fall back on if I needed to. Because as we work on ourselves, there's no real guarantee that we're going to get anywhere. If we're consistent, then we'll have a better chance of it. But the more options we maintain, the better chance we have that one of those things will take off. I didn't choose to
Mm,
pursue the full-time firefighting bit, but I went through all the training. I've got all of my credentials, and I'm a trainer as well now. And while I could still pursue it, I've chosen to pursue other things, and focus more of that on other things.
mm. Being able to stay consistent is definitely what will eventually get you there. You've shown that you've been consistent in many aspects of your life. Um, One, shout out to you with your journaling, which eventually led to a book. So I would love to touch on that for a moment, because some people say they want to start journaling and maybe they journal for an entire week and then they fall off. But you journal so consistently to the point that it turned into your first book. So how did you build the consistency in order to do that every single day?
Well, that was a transition for me, and like I was never that type. The firefighting being on as long, it was 16, 17 years when I first started this part of my journey. And I was an electrician apprentice electrician, and those construction and firefighting violent environments being dominantly masculine, like there's a lot of my circles that you just can't talk about that stuff, right? And maybe more so now,
Mm,
and like the more confident we individually get, but like I didn't feel like I could talk about journaling. I could talk about vulnerability. I could talk about, the feeling that I had, or just saying the word feelings around some of these people. So when I was feeling down and I was 320 pounds and just mentally, physically miserable, I found journaling was the only place that I could go to. And I was hiding it. Like my wife knew, but I wasn't telling anybody because I didn't want to hear about it. But it was the only place I could
mm,
go and I could outlet to myself to kind of organize thoughts. I could put stuff down, I could write whatever I wanted, and I didn't have to try and justify the feeling or justify the thought. And at first it was just a place for me to beat myself up, but then as I kind of set some goals without really knowing they were goals, going into dry January of 2021, it was like, I'm going to do this for 30 days. And I wrote this in the journal. And as the months progressed and I opened up to new things like listening to self-help and development podcasts and those books and audiobooks, and just making the most use of an hour-long commute to and from work to absorb as much of that content, and learning about habits and restructuring habits and routines, I started to keep this in the journal and organize these thoughts and write down what was working and not working and how I felt, and resetting new goals. Dry January became February, became 100 days, became all of 2021. And it was the journal throughout that I maintained because I didn't want to forget about these things. I didn't want to lose
mm,
the things I was learning, the things I was feeling, and not because I intended to put a book out, but because I really wanted it to work
mm,
this time. I really have tried over the years different resolutions in January, and nothing stuck. It was quickly let go, but I just needed it. And I needed to do something that I had never done before. And it was in that confidence that I continued the journal. Getting through about the end of 2021, a friend had asked me, who was like, how's it going? I said, oh, I could write a book. And it was just an expression about all the things that I had gone through that year. I was in my friend's wedding and he kept telling me I had to drink at his wedding, and um, about like removing alcohol and not wanting to go back to that. Yet it was like, um, the end of 2021 where I took that journal and said, this is something that I could have used when I got started, and really decided that I could be vulnerable and I could be open and I could share what I went through for the sake of who I used to be and anybody else that might relate. Um, and just about journaling in the beginning, it wasn't that I did it every day. I didn't do it every week. Like that is a lot of pressure, and I think a lot of why people that decide they want to start journaling don't continue is because you forget to do it, and then you don't get back to it, and it's been a week, a month, a couple months, and it's just that thing you tried once. But not every day do you have to do it. You can do it every week. You can do it when you feel something. You can do it when you don't want to miss on a moment. You can do it when you've learned. Like journaling really can be anything you want it to be.
mm. That's real. That's important. That is true, though. A lot of people do try to do the everyday journaling or 30-day challenge, and it ends up being a lot, and they end up burning themselves out. So you were doing it based on how you felt or when you felt inspired to write something, right?
Yeah, when I
How are
felt
you
inspired or
finding?
when I felt miserable or upset.
Okay, how are you finding the time throughout the day, or how did you make the time? Because sometimes people, they know they want to write something in their journal, they know they want to do it, even if they're not doing it every day. Maybe it's just once a week, but they're still not finding time because they have a jam-packed schedule. Let's just say a 9 to 5, and they're doing something afterwards. They have a family. How are you still making time to be able to journal? And how long were you journaling when you did? Was it 30 minutes, an hour? How long were you journaling?
Sometimes it was, 2 minutes, just a quick. paragraph, something I didn't want to miss. Other times, if I had time, it was, maybe it was an hour. Maybe it was a real vent session where I had all these things I was, upset about that I just needed to put down on paper, needed to just get it out of my head in a place that, I didn't have to explain it. And um, there's a lot of pressure in the wellness and development space to come up with this perfect, morning and afternoon and evening routine. When we're starting this stuff out and we're following some of the people that have they're at the peak, we'll say, if they're going to smoothie and exercise and read and journal and do all this stuff before they do anything in the morning, that's probably not going to fit where you're at when you start. Like, definitely not. So where I found the time was not to all of a sudden have the pressure of, I'm going to journal now, but I'm going to do it 3 o'clock in the morning every day, or I'm going to do it at whatever time. I fit it in where I needed to. I fit it in if it was the morning and I woke up and had a dream or I had something I didn't want to forget, I would take a minute and just jot it down. And I have a cupboard that I keep, all my typical deodorant and all those things. Like, it's my space. I put it in there because I'm in there all the time. So it's there when I needed it. It's in a handy location in the house where, like, I can get it without having to look for it. But it was maybe the morning. It was if I was home on a weekend, it might have been, it might be after this conversation. I don't want to miss something. It might be while I'm watching something in the evening and I have a thought. It was wherever I needed it to be, for however long I felt I needed it. I didn't put a lot of pressure on myself to maintain it because I just didn't want to hate doing it. I didn't want it to feel like it was a job or something that I had to do, even though, and if we set our non-negotiable goal, you've heard the non-negotiables, that's a lot of pressure. That could be something we despise later. So I didn't want to make it that. I wanted it to make it somewhere that I enjoyed, and I just had to fit it in, like wherever I could.
Mhm. That is something that I think a lot of us can take it with us and run. That I was actually having a conversation with my best friend's little brother recently, recently, a month ago. And I was telling him to keep. I don't even think it's within me right now. I can't find one, but it's like a little journal that's maybe like this big. Something that you
Mm-hmm.
can put in your pocket, something that he can for sure put in his book bag. And I was just like, you know what? Just keep this on you. And anytime you have any type of idea, write it down. Because he is always forgetting something. And we all forget stuff. Let's just be honest. We all forget it. We're all vulnerable
Mm-hmm.
to forgetting any type of information, idea, anything we have. But just having something to be able to document that process and get it out of your head. Really. Get it out of your head, put it down. Just like, you know what? It's out there in the world and I can move on. It's so beneficial for our mental health and also, I think, in a way, our physical well being. Because when we have so much stuck in our head, it almost gives us like, have you ever heard of analysis paralysis? You
Mm.
listen to a lot of podcasts
Yeah.
and read a lot of books. I'm pretty okay, cool. I'm sure you have, right? So it's almost like physically even stops us from taking action. So it's
Yeah.
it's really really important to be able to have that piece of notebook or whatever it is, something portable, really, not just like an entire binder, something that you can really take. Now, something I did hear you also touch on um, was, or actually, before we get to that, because you spoke on dry November, and then you said you can't drive everywhere. But before that, your book, your journal, ended up becoming a book, and you said you
Mm.
didn't plan on it being that. So, what was the transition from all your thoughts that were vulnerable to you and only your wife knew about, and you didn't even want to tell anybody that you were journaling? How did that end up transitioning to a book that's now published for the world to
So
see?
so that and actually, just quickly, the notebook and the journaling. Most people nowadays have a phone, And if it's not something like you need to have a structured book where you have the date and you have the dear journal, whatever, however you write it, you can have that phone. You can come out the notes app. You don't even have to write it. You can just hit the microphone and talk into it, and then it keeps your thought. So just if someone's thinking like, I want to do this, that's also a very easy option. So the book, when I came out with the journal, I wasn't talking to anybody. I was working through some stuff, and I set some rules for myself. It was just it came to me that if I was going to not drink, which was the base of change for me in the beginning, I was going to need some structure. So when I come up with, have fun, be involved, whatever I decided I needed as a structure, and I wrote these things down, like I started to get more and more comfortable with sharing certain things as more people around me started to, if I figure out that I meant it or that I was just going to be this person now or whatever. So as the year went on and I became more comfortable and more people were new, I started having other people that had similar thoughts. They were maybe wanting to start themselves. They were, shy about saying anything because of the same reasons I was. So I had people giving me like, questions, asking me questions, giving me like, praise, if you will, just to say you're doing great. And it was more when they said they felt inspired that I was like, you know what? Like, this isn't unique to me. This is what I'm going through, and the recipe might be unique, but a lot of the ingredients are the same, right? A lot of the stuff that makes up the situation I'm in is stuff we're all dealing with. So when I found more confidence in that recipe, if you will, then I found more confidence in sharing it with people. And when that friend of mine asked me about the October mark of the year I was, my recent goal was the year, it was like, I really found, and it took me a bit to process, but I really found the confidence in taking what I had written for me and creating it in a format that I could share with a reader that would understand, the moment I was in, the situation I was talking about, um, for the benefit of just sharing that other people go through the same things.
We're going to get back to the show in just a second. But in the middle of your journey to create, innovate, and lead, you probably found yourself facing challenges of creative blocks or stuck in the cycle of overthinking. Here's the thing, you aren't the only one experiencing this. So why should you go through this journey alone? What if there was a community of like minded individuals all striving towards success, ready to support, motivate, and hold you accountable? Well, I have the solution for you. A place where ambition meets action, where your dreams get a roadmap, and where every single stride gets celebrated. We're more than just an online community. We're a collective of creators, freelancers, and entrepreneurs who believe in the power of togetherness to overcome obstacles and achieve greatness. Joining this online private community means that you're not just setting your goals, but also taking decisive steps towards them, with a community ready to cheer you on with every step of the way. It's about consistent progress, shared learning, and the taste of achievement. If you're ready to elevate your journey, to transform your ambitions into achievements, and be part of a collective that believes, then achieves, visit verifiedphenom.com to take action today. That's verifiedphenom.com. I was just telling somebody recently something very similar to that, how we all are experiencing something very similar, or if not the same thing, but just a different perspective, right? Like you said, it's all kind of the same ingredients, but we all may just cook it up a little bit, or bake it up a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people need to hear the story from your perspective to be inspired to take change. Because as I'm pretty sure you've also noticed, if you read a whole lot of self-development books, you listen to a whole lot of self-development podcasts and all the things of that nature, a lot of them say the exact same thing.
Yeah.
They say the same thing. It's just a different person, a different tone of voice, and maybe one or two things that they did different. But for some reason, we've all heard one person that it just clicked for us. And
Mm-hmm.
you were that person and will continue to be that person for a lot of people. And what I've also had a chance to see was now you branched out a little bit more, and instead of just doing your book, you're doing content creation about everything that you believe in. Is
Mhm.
that's correct?
Yeah, that's true. It's the extension to the growth that I've had and what I'm trying to share.
How has that been for you? Because a lot of times people, the book is scary, right? Putting a book out can be a scary journey, but for some reason, putting content creation out seems a little bit more vulnerable. Maybe in my opinion, because it's a lot more instant. People see it a lot more instantly than they can go through a 200-page book. You can instantly get a comment on something, whether or not somebody likes it or not, is like within 30 seconds of you posting on social media. So how was, that mental journey for you for like, okay, yeah, I have a book, but now it's going to be a little bit more, deeper. I'm going to do a little bit more consistently with putting the content creation out on YouTube.
It's it is a journey in its own. A lot of I had a lot of self doubt. I had a lot of imposter syndrome and then a lot of feelings that like what makes me qualified or what says I can talk about this stuff and all of that weighed heavy even before I created my first video
Mm.
and before I was confident in putting the book out and you're right, a lot of the people that have done things personally, professionally, have done a lot of the same things, and it is that person that we can relate more to that we'll take the most from, even if it's the same message or similar message as someone else. Um, when I started and chose to put the book out, it was like, it was a lot for me mentally to come around that I wanted to bring people into that. And while I worked through it, it was realizing, like I said earlier, about just knowing that a lot of people will relate.
Mhm.
Like I was having people that I worked construction with that like would come out and like these are like grown men, even older than I am, that were like, you need to keep doing this because like talking about their own inspiration or talking about someone they talked to and feeling like if they had that person that was like, hey, I'm going to challenge where I'm used to being or who I thought I was as a person and become something different, that gives someone else that inspiration to do it. And it was in that regard where I was like, you know what? If I put a video out and it sucks, it should right away, right? I'm not going to put it out with a lot of experience, but then I'll learn from it. And someone might pick up from it, or I'm going to put out the next video a bit better and the third one a bit better. And I was on a podcast early on when I was talking more about the book by itself. And he's like, what's, just wondering what's up next. What are you going to do next? And I said, I don't know. I think I might try video, but I don't know. And he's like, well, why don't you? And I had all the self doubt and imposter excuses. I was like, I don't know. I just don't know if anybody wants it. And he's like, just do it. Like, man, it's going to suck, but you'll get better. Do it. And it was just like a small push. And then like that first video, I probably had recorded it 6 or 7 times before I felt comfortable enough to put it out. And the first one was like ripping off the Band-Aid. And by the second one, maybe it was only 2 or 3 takes. And by the, fourth and fifth and sixth video, it was like, I could do one and put it out. And now like, I feel confident and just, I have a thought and I'll create a, minute to 3-minute video or whatever it is. And I'll just post it and right away. And if people receive it, awesome. If they don't, okay, well that didn't touch people. I'll try again.
You're starting to get your coworkers come up to you, friends, family, keep going. At what point did you have like a mental switch in your mind that was like an aha moment? I was like, you know what? This is where I'm supposed to be. This is, or at least this is the message that I'm supposed to be sharing with the world.
I think the biggest thing was that I'm doing these things for myself. I'm working on these things for myself. I'm reading the books. I'm, working out. I'm setting these goals. And it's in the things I'm working on and the things I'm feeling that I'm sharing for who I used to be. And I'm not, even though I'll say you this and you that, I'm speaking to me in those videos. I'm speaking to who I am and who I used to be. And I'm not telling anybody to do anything that they're not, right? If there's some influence that I can give talking to me, that's where I find confidence, and I don't feel like an imposter anymore, because I'm not telling anybody to do anything that they don't do or don't want to do, right? It's up to us,
Mhm.
everything we see and hear, to pull what we can from it and to use what we want to from it. So while I talk to myself in what I share, um, I found a lot of people that are feeling inspired by it, and like I said, I'm having people from like burly construction men that are like, this is amazing. Like, I've done this. I've took a break from drinking, or I've stopped altogether, or I've, started exercising. One was talking to me about, started to bike ride, and just changing their relationship with their family and their kids because they
Mhm.
challenged who they used to be, or who, we work in different sectors. And a lot of times that sector, whatever it is we do, we feel like we have to be a certain way because we work that. Like, I work construction. That means I have to be this, this, and this. But nobody tells you have to do that. It's just, somewhere lingering unwritten somewhere, but you decide. And it was giving confidence for people around me, that to tell them that, I've decided, and so can you, that I've been given some feedback that I felt more confident in continuing to share and continuing to grow.
In what ways are you still working on yourself now?
Well, it's never, once we realized too, like, once I realized this was never, I'm never finished. We
Right.
don't finish this movement, if you will. Um, I'm just continuing learning, really. I'm continuing learning. I'm continuing absorbing, um, anything I can learn about, diet and health, and where the food comes from, if it's about what I'm eating, or how that exercise is going to affect me, or professionally, taking more courses, learning more about what I'm working on, about talking to people, about hosting, about whatever, just continuing to learn. And in that learning, I am trying new things, new exercises, new meals, new whatever. It's if we don't know because we haven't learned it yet, then we'll never know if it works or doesn't, right? So in my development, I'm continuing to work on my physical body, my mental body, and there's a lot I dealt with. Like, my dad, I talked about him being volunteer firefighter. He was a mechanic. There was a lot of like old mentalities, and I've called them generational traumas, that I was handed down through, those relationships, and I was forwarding that to my family and my kids because that's what I thought was true. So by challenging the person I used to be, also gave me that confidence and that learning to bring that home and do different things at home. Like, one of my kids was starting to feel like extra anxious, and we would have dinners together and nobody would talk. And I picked up something from John Gordon's Energy Bus, where basically he talked about the greatest golf shot, and people would go golfing, and that one shot that they made would keep them coming back. And it translate that to your daily life. I would bring that home, and we started this thing called our favorite thing. And every day at dinner, the five of us, I have three kids, my wife, we would each pick our favorite thing. And it was a struggle at first, but now we're 2 years later, and like, everybody's got like eight things. They just pick out like the smallest of things and biggest of things that happened in the day that make them smile. And this whole growth that I've been able to achieve and transfer, like, would have never happened if I didn't learn
Mhm.
more about all of these things.
So, are you? I think you answered this earlier, but somebody that's working full time job, you have a family. Sometimes, as we get older, we find it difficult to be able to find time for learning. If I'm not mistaken, you said that you have an hour commute to work every day, and that's where you're listening to your podcast.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite podcasts that you like to listen to?
Um, well, actually, the list is growing quite a bit, because I've been on, I think, about 40 some interviews. So a lot of the shows I'm on, including yours, like, I've got a lot of episodes in my queue that I'm listening to. So, um, don't be just closed off to. I'm telling people, like, there's a lot out there, but I definitely go to the School of Greatness, Ed Milet show, Sean Stevenson, his Model Health show. There's a lot of great content. Those they seem to have a lot more of the high profile guests. When I got started, that's all I could get to. I didn't know. I was too proud to be in that space. I felt like it wasn't for me, but I heard some interviews with Kobe Bryant. I heard interviews with Terry Crews. I heard interviews with Jim Carrey. Just people I couldn't relate to. I'm not an athlete, an actor, but I knew who they were. So when you hear the interview with someone when I heard the interview with someone that I felt like I knew or could relate to, then I eventually would get into, the Andrew Hubermans and the more professional, I don't say opinion, but sometimes opinion, sometimes from their literature. It's, so those podcasts, but not everybody has that hour commute. So to kind of add to that, I think that might be your next question, but like I'd come home and I'd talk to my wife and be like, oh, you need to hear this thing, or you need to listen to this, or you need to listen to this book. And like, she doesn't have that kind of time. A lot of people don't have 2 hours a day to listen. And that's where a lot of, like, the stuff that I put out, the stuff that others put out, it's in like a condensed version where, it's like the big message I'm picking up that I can share, that, maybe it's an hour episode that is, a 3-minute video. And we could fit more 3-minute videos in, more so than we feel we could fit an hour. So while, some days I don't have that commute, I still try and, listen to some short form stuff just to get the same benefit.
What's something that has stuck out to you the most recently that you learned? Like when you heard, you're like, oh my gosh, I have to take this home with me. I have to share this with the world.
I think the biggest thing is just still about habits. It is about, we all have heard, I'm sure, the 21 days, the 40 days. But the biggest thing is that sometimes that needs to be a cycle. Dr. Carolyn Leaf says that's a cycle. So, talking about not drinking or not smoking or not doing certain things, obviously those things are a lot harder for people than others. Mm-hmm. So like when I started and I was trying these habit things out, I was brushing my teeth twice a day, and it wasn't something that I did very well before. So I'd check mark the morning, check mark the night. I did it for the 100 days because I learned more about cycles. So, and then it's just something that stuck. Like I can't, I go to bed and I'll be like, oh, I got to get up and I'll go do it. So like learning about habits, the cycle of the 21 days, give yourself a chance to go through maybe one or two or more of those cycles to try and learn the things or unlearn the things that you're working on.
The habits that we're building is really, it's going to show us where we're going to be a couple years from now, 5-10 years. And being able to understand that will, one, make a person more aware, but two, make them a lot more intentional with the habits that they're building as well. And when people try to change, there's so much around habits. there's so much, like there's habit stacking, like you were just saying, like cycles. That was new to me. I never heard of cycles before. But at the end of the day, it's always just trying to figure out what's going to work best for you, because the habits and the consistency goes in hand. So if you're listening to this right now, you're trying to pick up some new habits, by all means, try to figure out what you want to do and test, right? I'm in marketing. We do a lot of A/B testing. Try to figure out which one's going to work the best for you, because we all operate slightly different. We all truly do. So, Sean, for you and your cycles, how were those 21-day cycles, or were they all 100-day cycles?
It started at a month. Like when I first did dry January, January's 31 days. So it started at a month. So I would do a month at a time. And when I did the first month, February is a short month, so it was almost, even though it was only 2 days shorter, it felt easier because, oh, this is a short month, I can get through it.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a 30-day cycle, and it became easier because I could track it on the calendar, and I'd flip the page and start over, and just keep it kind of that way. So that it worked out that way. But the other thing to add to a point earlier is that can be a lot of pressure, right? That 30-day, 20-day,
Mm-hmm.
even like 3-day cycle can be a lot of pressure. And one thing I learned was we just need to ask ourselves better questions. And that question can be, if we want to be a healthy person, the question could be as simple as, would a healthy person eat this? Would a
Mm-hmm.
healthy person do this? Would a healthy person? So when we start to ask ourselves that question over and over, or, if you want to be whatever, that question could be, would a firefighter do this? Would a skater do this? Like, whatever that means to you. You then make the decisions based on what your belief of that person is. If
Mm-hmm.
you want to be an athlete, would an athlete binge drink all weekend? Well, probably, because we've seen it in the news, but for argument's sake, no, they probably wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
That athlete wouldn't do that. What would an athlete do? An athlete would exercise. Okay, so would an athlete eat this? No, an athlete would go for a walk, go for a run. So when we decide what we want to be and we ask ourselves those questions, it'll help us then make better decisions for the habits and stuff that we try to create because of it.
Identity. Always trying to figure out what the identity is. I find myself doing that constantly, especially my biggest challenge is food. I'm not gonna lie.
Mm,
My biggest challenge is food. So I've been an athlete my entire life. Now I'm starting boxing. I've been boxing for about a year and maybe a couple months now. And my coach told me that I could easily be in like the 171 weight class, 175 weight class, 189. And I'm like 210. And he was like, it's easy to cut. You just gotta cut the food that you're eating. And so every time I'm going to the grocery store, I'm hungry and I'm looking at something, I'm like, would a boxer eat this? But they put this in their system. So to go along with what you're saying, like, yes, it is the question that you have to ask yourself. You have to go a little bit deeper and ask yourself, put yourself in the identity of what you want to become. Even if, right, even if you don't want to be a high level athlete, right? But a high level athlete is a healthy, fit individual. So then you
mm,
kind of have to ask yourself, would a healthy, fit individual eat this? Would they consume this? All things of that nature. So, if you're like, well, I don't want to be LeBron. I don't want to be Messi. Like,
yeah.
would you still want to be healthy? Like, what are some questions that you're asking yourself, Sean, like on a daily basis or a weekly basis to make sure you keep yourself in check?
Uh, the biggest one now, because I've seen some growth, is would the person I want to be do this? Like, would
Mm-hmm.
me now not go for that walk or exercise? Would the me now, like, I'm using the person that I'm trying to be now instead
Mm-hmm.
of the LeBron example or the Messi. I'm saying, you know, do I want to lose a lot of this growth by not continuing what I'm doing? So does Sean now want to do this? Because otherwise, the person that I was so upset with, that I journaled about, that I wrote about, and that I shared, that person's behind me, kind of looking like, I can come back. So a lot of my questions now are around, the person I used to be to the person I am now. And,
Mm-hmm.
to add to that, we're never going to be the person that we used to be. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not, that person's not going to creep up on me and then, and be there. I may gain a little bit of weight back depending on what I'm doing at the time, but we never fail. We learn.
Mm-hmm.
So as we grow, we will never be the person we used to be because we've learned a better, or we've done better, we've done differently.
Mm-hmm.
And while it may be tough to continue or carry on every single day, we've at least learned as much that we can be better the next day.
We're never going to be the person that we used to be. What advice would you today in 2024 give yourself 10 years ago?
My biggest advice that I would give who I used to be is that I don't have to fix it myself, that I don't have to bottle it up. I never reached out for any help when I started journaling. Like I said, it was in private. It was for me, and it was all because I felt like I couldn't talk about it. It was all because I felt like I just had to fix it. I had to suck it up, be a man, all those things, and just deal with it. But 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, I needed to know that it was okay to talk. It was okay to be open. And, therapy, all those things, it's there for a reason. And it's not there when you have, worst case scenario, because we don't have to wait until the absolute worst case scenario to work on ourselves and to be better. We don't need a diagnosis. We don't need an incident. We don't need, something awful happen in order to change, right? We can do that anytime we want. And I needed to hear that even 5 years ago. So that would be my biggest thing.
Starting to wrap up here a little bit today. One question I always love to ask people is, as you say, we're not the same person as we used to be, but we're still learning, we're still growing. We have different aspirations as we continue to grow and mature in life. What was success to you 20 years ago? What is success to you today?
Success to me 20 years ago, I thought it was all about money. I thought it was all about accolades. I thought it was about, me individually. Success to me today is teamwork. Success to me today is resources, is in family and friends, and it doesn't mean much to me now to be by myself. And I don't mean physically, but we're all doing the same thing. We're all in different parts of the same sort of journey. And success to me today is sharing that wealth, sharing that knowledge, and encouraging anyone around me that can pick up on it in a non-judgmental way, because people will do what they do. Success to me now is just sharing what I know, what I've learned, in a way that someone else might feel that inspiration and start doing something that helps them.
That's a leader right there. Love that. I love it. I love it. Sean, how can people find you and how can they support you?
Well, my biggest everything is out on my website. Links to all my content, seanrobinson.ca. My books showcased there. I put all my podcasts and stuff, linked through my website to drive everybody to the creators, and that way. And the other biggest thing to support me is just work on one thing today that makes you better. That helps me, because you can't be better if you don't start working on you, and that's what I'm working on for me. So I encourage everybody to do the same.
That's real. Well, y'all, this has been another amazing episode. Sean, thank you so much. Thank you for taking time out of your Saturday to be with us today. Y'all, this has been another episode of Verified Phenoms. We will catch you on the very next episode. See ya.
Thank you very much.